You're listening to When the Curtain Comes Down.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to When the Curtain Comes Down podcast, where we interview all sorts of experts in the theater world on stage and off so that you can have a better understanding of what goes on in those crazy, talented minds of theirs. Today, we have special guest Marc Tuminelli with us. Are you ready for this, Marc?
I'm so ready. Your intro was fantastic.
Thank you. For those that don't know, Marc is the founder of New York's top training for young actors Broadway Workshop, as well as a nonprofit Project Broadway. Most recently, he was a dialogue coach for the new Disney movie Better Nate Than Ever. He has a podcast of his own named Little Me Growing Up on Broadway on the Broadway Podcast Network. And that is just a brief overview of all the incredible work that he has done.
Okay, you're so good. You were born to podcast.
I know, totally. First of all, I just want to say congratulations on Better Nate Than Ever. Oh my gosh, that movie is incredible.
Did you love it?
Yeah, I've seen it 3 times, chills every time. It's like, mwah.
You've seen it more than I have. I've seen it twice, but I'm ready to watch it again. It's so good.
So good. Oh my gosh.
I'm ready. I can talk about Nate for the entire hour. It was truly one of the most magical experiences of my entire life and career. And it's something that just kind of came out of nowhere. And getting to work with that cast of that movie is something that I'll always cherish in a huge way. It was really an incredible experience for me.
Okay, yeah. Well, we'll talk more about
it. Okay.
That's so good.
More on Joshua Bassett later. Here we go.
Okay, first question. Have you always known that you wanted to be a performer or in the arts industry? Was there ever a time that you wanted to do anything else?
Yeah, it's the only thing I could ever imagine doing since I was a little kid. When I was like 4 years old, I was obsessed with Flashdance, the movie, which is something that I hope that you haven't seen, but maybe you've seen. It's about, Jennifer Beal plays a out of work iron worker, and she turns stripper at night. And I loved that movie so much. And so like, I always loved dancing. I would dance around my house. I always danced. And then, I could sing when I was a little kid. And so then that sort of became that I did theater, and I used to see theater. And so my whole life has always been about performing in some way. And musical theater has been my life for as long as I can remember. I'm obsessed with shows. I'm obsessed with Broadway performers. I'm obsessed with directors, the whole thing. And so I've never wanted to work in any other industry, nor could I imagine working in any other industry. And so I've been really lucky that I've been able to turn my passion into my career. It's not exactly as I planned it out, but ultimately, there's never been a time where I was like, I should be a construction engineer. I should be an accountant. I think that theater calls for you, and the right people find it. And if you're slick enough about it, you can find a way to stay in it for your entire life. And so that was kind of my, story. I've been basically in the business professionally since I'm about 12. And I never really did anything else. I mean, I had other jobs. We can talk about them, but I never thought of like having a different career, like becoming a math teacher. Oof, I would have got fired that day. Anyways. Yeah.
Oh yeah. What inspired you? What was the process of forming Broadway Workshop?
In 2007, I had 2 career, I want to say catastrophes back to back of shows that I was involved in that I thought would be going to Broadway or going to Broadway with me. And they went and not with me. And so after being an actor for my whole adult life at that point, and I was about 26 then, I had been teaching all along. And I thought, I'm just going to start my own little business, and I'll do classes and some workshops with my Broadway friends. And in between acting jobs, I hadn't decided I was going to give up acting. I just was like, let me focus on this for a minute. And within like 2 months, it was so clear to me that this was something I was born to do. I loved doing it. I loved making the money associated with it and having some autonomy over my life and career and what I was doing. And it was very hypnotic to me, and I loved it. And so very quickly, I was like, I'm not auditioning anymore, because on a Sunday afternoon, I would sit next to a big Broadway casting director and teach a workshop to 9 and 10 and 11-year-olds. And then the next day I would have to go and audition for that casting director. And it was very uncomfortable. And I was like, oh, I can't do that. So it was very clear to me that I had to put all of my eggs in the Broadway Workshop basket to make it succeed. And I'm really glad I made that choice. But back to like the inspiring, what inspired me was I was a kid who did not have access to musical theater training. It just actually didn't really exist. A little bit, at our local community theaters and stuff like that. But to work with Broadway stars and get advice and coaching from people who were really doing it in the industry, who were really in the throes of these Broadway shows, the casting directors responsible for these things, to have that experience as a kid would have been something I would have died to do. And so I think that was the inspiration of Broadway Workshop, and it continues to be, to create opportunities that I would have died to do when I was 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. And so I sort of create every program under that. Like, if I was the kid in the program, what would I want? And so that was really the inspiration, and it continues to be so.
That's so good. Oh my gosh. And I am so glad that you had all that. I mean, I'm sorry about the.
No, it's okay.
No,
That's really interesting. We should talk about that, is that you get no's a lot as an actor, I'm a director still, and I'm still seeking work outside of Broadway Workshop, and I direct a lot of projects. And obviously we talked about working on the Nate movie, but I still get no's. I get no's all the time. And so I have to remember what I tell my students is the no is like kind of a yes for something else that you don't know about yet. And so it's really hard to deal with they don't want you, you're not right, you didn't get the job, and still show up and still have a good attitude. But we have to remember that, like, what we do as artists, and I don't like saying that, it sounds so obnoxious, like as artists, but as emotionally artistic, creative people, what we do is so different than people who might work at like a bank or might work in an investment firm, is that we want something so bad that so many other people want. And there's going to be a lot of no's before you hear yes. And even you might hear yes 10 times and then have 30 no's after that. So it's just every day you have to put yourself on the line. So I am glad, in retrospect, I am really glad that those career things that I really wanted to happen didn't, because first of all, they weren't that successful, and I don't think they would have changed my life. But Broadway Workshop, in fact, changed every part of my life. And I don't think I would have done it had those two things not happened back to back.
Oh yeah. I did a workshop at Broadway Workshop recently, my first one, and I'd heard such great things about it. I flew all the way from Houston to New York.
I know.
Hours
I love that. Was for Andrew's class, right?
Yeah, it was so
Andrew Barth Feldman. He was so great. He's been my student most of his life. And so it's fun to see him grow up to be a big, fabulous star.
Yeah, but like the information I got in like just like what, 3 hours?
Yeah.
Blew my mind.
Great.
I remember leaving the building and thinking like, dang, I wish I lived in New York, because I wanted to do.
But that's
like,
the thing. I say at the start of every class, like, when you walk out of here, you are going to feel better about what you know how to do. Your toolbox will be a little more filled. And that happens in our virtual classes. That happens in our real classes. It's like, if you come ready to work, you're going to learn so much. If it's not your thing, you're also going to realize that. And then you can go do something else. You can play football.
That's amazing. You created that. And it's like,
it's cool.
What's it like being able to teach all those kids and just knowing that you're pretty much changing their lives with the information that you give?
All right, hold up. I'm not changing everyone's lives, but there's some lives that have been changed. But you don't think about that in the middle of doing anything. You're not like changing this kid's life. Every once in a while I meet a kid and I'm like, oh, I'm going to change your life. Meaning that, like, I see the potential and I'm going to try to set you up with an agent or a manager, and they're probably going to change your life, but I'll be like the person who unlocks the door a little bit. But in the moment, I'm just doing like the job I do every day. So whether you're coming to Broadway Workshop because you love singing and dancing, and probably after high school, you were going to be a teacher, a lawyer, a doctor, but you had this little magical moment of time where you performed, I might be a huge part of that. And then I also might, those other kids might go on to then pursue a career in the business. So it's sort of like 50-50, but my job is to just give great experiences and let the chips fall where they may. And so I don't think I sit there and go, oh, these lives are being changed today, boy. But I just think like, oh, we're having a great experience, and we'll see how that plays out. If that makes sense.
Okay. What's the number one thing you teach all your students? Like the number one.
I mean, the number one thing really is about knowledge and preparation. So it's two things, but preparation is the number one thing, meaning that you can't just show up and think that everyone's going to see what they need to see. You need to have the information back to this toolbox. You need to know songs. You need to know cuts of songs. You need to make sure your resume is in the proper format. You make sure your headshots look like you. You have to know about the writers of musical theater. The prep of being a student of the theater will prepare you for the business. Because if you don't know who the casting director is, who the original star was, like all of that stuff will help you. So being prepared, even if you get an audition out of nowhere and they send you 4 pages of scenes, which we call sides, you get 4 pages of sides the night before. Well, you better cancel your plans that you have so you can memorize your sides so that you can be as prepared as possible when you audition. So the preparation is the number one thing, and you have to treat it like it's a business, because for you or a friend, it might be like doing your school show is really fun. It's after school, you're hanging out, but it's not, no one's making money from that. But when you start auditioning professionally, it is a profession, meaning that people's livelihood, whether or not they can pay their rent, depends on whether the show is a success, depends on whether this show runs, depends on whether this pilot gets picked up. And so there's a lot at stake. And so actors especially have to come to the table ready to work and understanding that it is a career and it's not for fun. You do your high school show for 4 performances, maybe 2 performances. Now you've joined a Broadway show that hopefully will run for years, whether you're in it or not. But the stakes are really high. And I think it's hard to understand that switch from theater because you love it and theater because it's a career. And so that is being prepared and treating it as such will put you in a different echelon of performers. So that's the number one thing I think we try to teach. And then if I can give you a number kind of 2, it's really about what makes you special and how to bring it out. So that is pretty important, because when you think about Broadway stars that you gravitate to, who are like the first 2 people you think of when you think of your favorite Broadway stars?
Oh gosh, Andrew's on there.
All right, so Andrew Feldman. We'll use Andrew as an example. Andrew is not a historic leading man Broadway type. He's short. He's interesting looking. He's funny. He is his own little character of a human, and he has embraced that 100% his whole life. And so when he auditioned, he couldn't be Ben Platt in Dear Evan Hansen. He had to be Andrew Barth Feldman in Dear Evan Hansen. So as much as he might pull a moment or a thought from Sir Ben Platt, he still has to be Andrew. He has to be in his short body. You know what I mean? He can't be curly in Oklahoma or whatever that looks like. In the same way, Kristen Chenoweth's a great example. If Kristen Chenoweth tried to walk into the room and be 5'10" and a leading lady ingenue looks like, she's gorgeous, obviously, but she's this little pint-sized person with a cute little voice. She has to lean into that because that's what makes her special. Andrew's thing makes him special. When I was an actor, being 5'6", an Italian, Jewish-y looking kind of person was what I leaned into. I didn't try to lead into leading man, big voice, gorgeous, 6-foot muscle. That's not who I was. So if you can understand who you are, what's interesting about you, and what makes material exciting on you, or what your thoughts are on material, and then insert that into the character that's already been written, you will find more success than trying to be Kristen Chenoweth or trying to be Andrew Feldman or trying to be Idina Menzel. You could be an Idina Menzel type, but you could never be her because there is only one. So the other thing that I try to teach a lot is like, well, what material are you excited about? What do you do that's funny? That is not the way the last person did it. And that's how we find some magical performers. And that's how people stand out in auditions. If you're a girl who's like, 5'7" and you wear that same dress everyone else is wearing, and you sing the same 3 songs everyone else is singing, you will disappear. But if you walk in and you're interesting and you're funny and you wear glasses and you try not to become someone else, you will find much more success in the business. So we teach that a lot. Be your most individual self and put that on the material, and then be fearless about it.
So amazing.
I don't know.
To kind of piggyback off the last question, I said piggyback, didn't I?
Piggyback. Let's piggyback off the question.
To kind of piggyback off the last question, what do you think is the number one mistake that most people are making in this industry? Most performers.
Yeah, I think the number one mistake that gets made is the lack of preparation, where a lot of people are winging it. And I also think that there is a sense of entitlement that sometimes happens because someone has been working really hard on something. I deserve this because I worked really hard on it. I should be the lead in the we can talk about this in any age or any type. Senior year of high school, you think you're going to be the lead of your show because you built up to that for the 3 years, right? And then you're like, it's my time. I deserve it. I'm entitled to it. But in fact, that is not a thing that exists. You're not entitled to anything. So, you could work the hardest and still not get the part. So it's about how you take that no, or take that I didn't get it, but I got this other part, and turn that into a win. How you take your failures and turn them into wins. And these are all things that I am so glad we're talking about, because I had a recent, what I would consider a failure, a directing job I really wanted that I didn't get. And I was sad about it. I was all that into, I deserve it. I worked really hard. I'm so good. But the fact is that the person who got it also works really hard and is really good. And it's a very good reminder that the entitlement will never lead you to any other success, where you can say, all right, what did I learn from this experience? Could I be more prepared? Could I be nicer to work with? Could maybe I've been a little bit rude to people because I don't think I need that. You know what I mean? All the things. So I think that the number one mistake you can make is feeling like you deserve something and then not being prepared because you think you're good. You think you can wing it. Those are the mistakes. And then the other thing is like, sometimes people are very rude to monitors on auditions, or a reader, or someone they don't think is important, and they don't realize how important those people are. So I judge a lot of people about how they behave with my staff, like an assistant and intern. I watch how like sometimes Broadway superstars that come teach a Broadway workshop are with those people. And that's how I decide how I think they are. Because they're going to be nice to me. I'm paying them, I'm the boss. But are they going to be nice to the intern who's sitting behind the desk? Are they going to listen to the kids and take their questions? So a little bit, the mistake that people make is that they are sometimes very rude to people because they have eclipsed where they thought they would go in the career, and now they're big stars. And I think it is so important to be nice and take care of people and give what you're given. And remember that if you're a big Broadway star and you got there, there is somebody that is looking at you and going, I wish I was that person. And so it becomes really important that you take care of all the people, not at a detriment of yourself, but that you say hello and you say, oh, it's so nice to meet you. Even if they know you. Introducing yourself and taking time with people and saying yes to people when they ask you to do things. I ask a lot of people to do a lot of things, and sometimes they just don't respond. And I'm like, how hard is it to just send an email and say, hey, I'm not available for this, but thank you for thinking of me. It took 20 seconds. And then I'm going to talk so nicely about you on podcasts. You know what I mean? So those are like 3 things, but I will never shut up. So keep going. Next question.
Good. Okay. We're back to Better Nate Than Ever.
Great. I love it.
I just want to know what it was like being a part of that incredible project, and like the process, and speak whatever.
I'll give you the lowdown. Tim Federle, who's the writer, director, and producer of the movie, is a friend of mine from when he used to be a Broadway dancer. So how about that? This is so crazy. Whoa. Life comes full circle. So he is someone that I've known for a long time through my really good friend, Karen Katz, and someone who's worked at Broadway Workshop, taught class at Broadway Workshop when he was in Broadway shows. So we've gone back a long time. And I always knew there was something very special about him. And he wrote these books, and he's transitioned out of being a performer into being a writer and a producer and a director. And when Nate came up, Karen, our friend, said to him, hey, like, you should maybe talk to Marc about working with the actors in the movie. And so he's like, oh, that's a great, person for this job. And we interviewed for it. And I didn't even know if I wanted it or if I could do it. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, no, I definitely want to do it. So I had never worked on a big budget movie and I didn't know anything. So Tim hired me And luckily, Tim's assistant, Gracie Catanzarite, is the most wonderful person. And she kind of helped me figure out how to be on set, how this job worked. I didn't know. We were in rehearsal for a month, which was just Tim and the two kids and me and Mary Mitchell Campbell, our musical super director. And we basically worked with the kids all day long. It was just the kids at that point, while the dancers were in another studio doing other stuff. And then we started filming the movie. And that's when I started working with Norbert Leo Butz and Michelle Federer and Joshua Bassett and Lisa Kudrow, and every single actor who came on set, I coached before we filmed, sometimes in between takes. And so as we started filming the movie, I started to get more and more comfortable with what my job was, which was essentially dialogue coach means that I'm sort of like the person, the director doesn't have time to work with every actor on set at all times, but that was my full job. So every morning I would start the day with Ruby and Aria and Lisa mostly, and Joshua, and we would run their scenes while they were in hair and makeup. If they were getting lines wrong, I would come up with like tricks for them to memorize those lines better. Sometimes we would talk about what was going on in the scene before. We would talk about things that we had forgotten that we were doing during our table work. And so my job is to constantly keep the actors engaged and excited about the work we're doing. And then also Tim would text me notes for the actors that I would relay to them. Sometimes I would give them the camera blocking. I'd be like, then you're going to go around the table here and the other camera will get you here. So it's just sort of like the person in between the director and the actor. And that's the work I love doing the most, because I love working with actors. And it was really fun to sit with Lisa Kudrow for a few hours every morning in the makeup trailer and talk about the scene. And she was always so game to play. And every actor in that movie was so open, honest. I didn't have an issue with anyone. No one's like, I don't need this. They were like, how can I make this better? Or sometimes you do a scene and you film it, one person's filming it. We're filming on one person, and then you stop for like 2 hours and then you film the other side of it. So in that 2 hours, the person who hasn't been filmed yet wants to deliver the most that they can when the camera turns on them. And so on that break, you might be coming up with ideas. You might be coming up with ways to keep it fresh. Sometimes you'll start at 4:30 at night and you'll wrap at 4:30 in the morning. And so when you're filming overnight, when you watch the Times Square scene, which is basically Ruby, a lot of background, which I am also in the background of that scene. So
I know, I saw that.
there you go.
I was like,
and the reason why is so that I could be close to Ruby to give him acting notes in between takes.
oh, okay.
Video Village, where the producers, the director, and where I would normally be, was like 5 blocks away.
Well, I heard that you kept trying to make him break character.
I did try to make him break character a lot. I guess you listen to my podcast with Ruby because that's the only way that we know that. But yeah, every time Ruby would walk by me in the take, I would be with Gracie and we would be speaking with a different accent. And we had our own backstory, but like we filmed that overnight. And so like part of the job is like, how do you keep a 13-year-old at the time, 14-year-old boy engaged all night long, at 2:00 in the morning, it's like, well, let's play heads up. Let's have a dance party. What can we do? And that's not necessarily my job, but a little bit it's my job because he needs to kill it in every take. And so that's my job to make sure that happens. So working with someone like Ruby Wood is a dream come true. Never once did that boy have an attitude or a problem. And never once did those two kids, Ruby and Aria, who spent hours and hours and hours together, ever have an unkind word to each other. They took care of each other. They advocated for each other. And that's what you see in the movie. You see two young people who love each other no matter what, and still do. They talk constantly. It's like, they're really special. And so that's the other thing. It's like they cared as much about what they were doing as what the other person was doing. Like they cared more, I would say, about the other actor. And that's how Lisa is too. Lisa Kudrow, every take, she cares more about what the other person is getting than what she's doing. And so you see that in the movie, you see that those are the people you want to work with. So back to your question 2 questions ago, it's like, what is the mistake you make is to not be that person. Joshua Bassett, same thing. He would constantly give Ruby things so that Ruby would have better takes, so that he would react more. And that is the magic of making a movie, is that you get to keep trying it. Whereas on stage, you go beginning to end every night. And in a movie, we do one scene, maybe 2 pages for what could be 10 hours. So how do you keep that interesting? And so it is just a totally different medium. It was a dream to work on, one day a week, every week. I'd be like, oh my God, this is so hard. But the rest of the week was normally pretty fun. Yeah. Do you have any specific, Nate, questions that I can answer?
Gosh. How late would you guys normally stay up every day?
It's just one night a week. We would do an overnight. And that is partly because we had 2 kids in our movie. You can't do more than that. But on a regular movie without kids, you can film all night long, every night. I watch TV so differently now. In movies, I'm watching Ozark, and they have so many night scenes. I'm like, oh my God, they must never shoot. And it might just be at, the scene might be taking place at 7 o'clock at night, but it's dark. And so that means they shot that probably from sundown until sun up. It's and they're dragging, on Ozark. I'm just watching right now, which is why because they're dragging a body. We didn't have to do anything like that at Nate. So, but we got to shoot big musical numbers, and but those were mostly we'd start filming, early call might be 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And then we would start filming at 6 or 7, and then normally wrap by 7 or 8 o'clock at night before the sun would go down. So it's stuff like that. It's really interesting. But when you're filming an interior, they make the lighting the same. So it's the same all day. So you're in a kitchen in the morning, you might start in the morning, and now it's 5 or 6 o'clock at night. And that sunlight is exactly the same because it's all manufactured in a light box in a window. But, we film, the schedule is different legitimately every day, but they have to give you I think it's 12 hours between when you wrap and when you're called for the next day, so that you have to have 12 hours off. But the kids can only work it's 10 hours total, and I think 6 of those hours can be on set and the rest they have to be in school. So it's very long. It's long days, but it's much easier with kids.
That's so interesting. I wanted to talk about this for hours. Unfortunately, it's podcast. Okay, last question. What was my last question? Oh yeah. Wait. Oh yeah. How can people learn more about you and all the amazing work?
That great question. Well, listen, Broadway Workshop's my company. It's my baby. It's my business. So if you love theater and you're a performer and you're interested in doing more theatrical training, you can visit us at broadwayworkshop.com, get on our mailing list, follow us on Instagram at Broadway Workshop. So what's up at Broadway Workshop. We have a really fun 5 weeks of summer that we're gearing up for, that I'm working on all day. I've been working on all day. And then Broadway Workshop Live, which is our big concert event that we're doing to celebrate coming back to doing performances. And it's a benefit for, this is my dog, is a benefit for our nonprofit Project Broadway. And that is May 15th at Sony Hall. And that will feature Sierra Bogus, Andrew Barth Feldman, Presley Ryan, Erica Henningsen, Anthony Wayne, a lot of really incredible Broadway performers and a lot of alumni. So check out Broadway Workshop for that. Check out Project Broadway as well. You can follow me at Marc Tuminelli on Instagram. You can also follow the Little Me podcast on Instagram at Little Me Podcast. And I've sort of pulled back a little bit from podcasting. So I am releasing 1 episode a month moving forward, because as you know, it's a lot of work, but it's really fun. So follow us on all the things: Broadway Workshop, Project Broadway, Marc Tuminelli, and Little Me Podcast. I'm sure there's a business I have that I'm not plugging right now. And also make sure you watch Better Nate Than Ever on Disney Plus, and keep your fingers crossed that there's more Nate coming in the world for everyone. Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming on. It was so much fun. And for all you people listening, if you love theater, the only option you have is to go to do a Broadway workshop. It will change your life. It's amazing.
That's the best. Thank you. You're so good at this.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
It's very new to it.
So. Absolute pleasure. Just keep doing it, especially if it's fun. And if it's not fun, play soccer.
And with those final words of wisdom from Marc Tuminelli, it's time to wrap up the first episode of When the Curtain Comes Down. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. End scene.